Yeah, I like propaganda.
So what I'm going to do is, I will come back to that. I mean, I will say that at the core, what I would say is this. Anytime that any one individual is able to accumulate that much wealth and power, you've actually got a problem on your hand, period, end of story. You know, my daddy would say, you know, money and power is a lot like horse manure. If you pile it up all in one place, it stinks. But if you spread it around, you can do a whole lot of good with it. And I do think that that's the way that we've actually got us a problem, because we've allowed a few small individuals to accumulate ever more of the power, wealth, and decision-making authority in our country. And when it comes to media, it's especially problematic because they use the media as an effort to try to control how we think. That's what I think is going on. But with permission, sir, I'm going to come back sort of to this story and finish it up, and then we'll open it up for an open discussion and really dig into questions like that. So the king gets thrown out, right? The American Revolution happens. A new government gets put in its place. And that new government, the core of the new government, the charter for the new country, if you will, what is that document called? The supreme law of the land? Constitution. The U.S. Constitution. And so, in a very short amount of time, I'm going to lay out to you my understanding of how the U.S. Constitution is supposed to operate. How many people have read the Constitution, say, in the last year or so? Several hands go up. So y'all grade my papers and see if I get this more or less right. I'm going to assert that the way the Constitution operates, one way of looking at it, not the only way, but a very important way of looking at the Constitution, is that there are, broadly speaking, two actors, two principal components. The first actor, the first principal component, is the most important. In fact, it's the first three words of that document. We the people. And I got to say, those are hallowed words in this country. The idea begins, in fact, the Constitution begins, we the people of the United States come together and we form, actually, the second actor in this Constitution, and that is to say, we are creating government. In this document, we the people are described as being free and sovereign. And again, what does sovereign mean?
Authority to rule.
We have the authority to rule. We the people rule here. That's a bold assertion of where the power for governing comes from in the United States of America. Government does not rule, or at least is not supposed to rule. Government does not rule. In fact, government is not free, but government is subordinate. Government is not sovereign. Government is accountable. Government is subordinate to whom? The people. Government is accountable to whom? The people. That's the way this is supposed to operate. That's kind of got a ring to it. I like how this is going. We the people are free and sovereign. That's because we the people are described as having certain legal rights. Government does not have any rights in this document. In fact, government has duties. A way to think about this, if I have the right to do something, it means I can do it and I don't need anybody's permission. In fact, I can do it even if you don't like it.
Nanny,
That's
nanny.
the idea. I'm sorry?
I said nanny.
Something like that, as a matter of fact. And the important thing is understanding a duty. If one has a duty, it means you have to do it even if you don't want to. That you can be compelled to do so. And the point I'm making is, in this framework, we the people are free and sovereign, and we have core rights that cannot be violated. Government is subordinate and accountable and has duties. And where does government duties come from? Well, that's because we the people are sovereign, meaning all the power resides with the people. In fact, in the Declaration of Independence, there are these words: the only government that is legitimate is the government that has the consent of the governed. You have to actually, this is a very powerful idea. So, but all this power, a certain amount of that power is delegated to government. How much power do we delegate to government? Why, only enough to do the duties that we want them to do. This is a very powerful way to think about it. Think of it this way. In our individual concept, when we are acting as individuals, we have core legal rights that cannot be violated. We are free and sovereign as individual citizens, but collectively we do make up the people. But here, government itself is where we act collectively. Another way to think about it is in our private realm, as individuals, we have legal rights. We are sovereign. But in our public realm, it's not that way. In other words, think of it this way, that, I look at this whole framework and I think this is absolutely brilliant. I mean, it really is a beautiful way to think about how as an individual I have rights that are sacrosanct. And by the way, the Constitution doesn't create rights. The Constitution recognizes rights, pre-existing rights, otherwise known as natural law. That is law that precedes the Constitution. I like to say that there are rights based on this. My belly button. Now, they're human rights. By virtue of being a human being, I have certain rights that are profound and sacrosanct. And if you're more modest and you don't want to check here in public, go home, make sure you've got a belly button. And if you do, you also have core human rights that cannot be violated. Even if the democratic process, and this is the key, the democratic process is appropriate for how to create the body politic. Public decisions ought to be made collectively together. But the public process can never infringe upon your individual human rights to free speech, to think for yourself, to assemble with how you want to assemble. This is the key. The brilliance of the U.S. Constitution is that it recognizes that we have individual sacrosanct human rights and that we are going to create a governmental structure where we can make the public policy decision collectively and together. This is brilliant. We should try that in this country. This would work. And I'm not even joking. This is brilliant and we've never done it. We have never actually experienced a true functioning democratic republic in the United States of America. Because, time out, before I go 1 second further, waxing poetic about how beautiful the U.S. Constitution is, we've already covered that 1776 is the Declaration of Independence. So what year is the Constitution either drafted in convention or ratified?
1781.
1781 is the Articles of Confederation. 1787 is the Constitutional Convention. 1789 is the ratification. 1781 are the Articles of Confederation. But during this time period, the reason I want that date up there, during this time period, somebody tell me who got to be a legal person. Who had legal personhood? Who was part of we the people in this time period?
Property owner.
So you had to be a property owner. What else?
Male.
You had to be a man. If you weren't a man, you don't literally get to be a person. Say it again, ma'am. You had to be white. If you're not white, you don't get to be a person. Another one, most people don't recognize this, you actually had to be in the right religion.
That's right.
So it's a very amazing thing. Another way to think, so here's another, I love these little pop quizzes that I'm putting on y'all. Here's one. What percentage of the adult population in this new country, these 13 colonies, what percentage of the adult populations were actually legally persons and part of we the people?
18?
18%? 10%? Somewhere in between?
27.2%.
27.2%? Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, you are not sufficiently cynical. Because the answer is 5 to 7% of the adult humans were legally persons, fully capable of owning land, voting, participating fully and completely as sovereign citizens. And so, another way to say this, folks, that as beautiful as this is, and it is beautiful, because they're not just words and rhetorical flourishes. These concepts are beautiful, and they're worth fighting over, they're worth dying over. This is how we ought to be organizing ourselves. But the particular perversion that the ruling elites have done is to take this, our desire for living like this, and perverted it, and we don't live like this, but they get us confused by thinking that we do. And we don't, and we never have. Here's something. The United States of America is not now, nor has it ever been. In fact, it wasn't actually designed to be a functioning democratic republic. We've been snookered. We've been bamboozled. And the people doing it were the ruling elite, the real minority of this country, the small 1/2 of 1% who are accumulating ever more of the wealth and power. And we've got to do something about it the same way other movements have done something about it. In fact, no less a historian than Howard Zinn. Many of you, I hope, will know that name. Howard Zinn said, one way of looking at American history, one lens, there are many ways to look at American history, but one important way to look at it is as a group, as a series of struggles by groups of human beings to be legally defined as persons under the Constitution. A very important way to look at American history. Now, some people might say, all right, Cobb, you've got a scathing critique about empire from the 13th century. You're all angry about the original founding of this country. But hey, relax. Women can vote. Slavery's over. It's all good. And I say, au contraire, mon frere. Because now it's time to reintroduce the idea of the corporation itself into this narrative arc, this story, if you will. Because here's a question. I see your hand. Oh, you're just stretching? So here's a question. Does anybody know what it takes to form a corporation in California today?
Couple $100.
A couple $100, and what do you have to do, Gary?
Fill out some papers.
Fill out some papers. Where do you send them? Secretary of
Secretary
State.
of State.
Send them to the Secretary of State. And do you know, as long as your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, and your check cashes, do you know what the Secretary of State will do? They will issue you a charter, and you will, poof, be created a corporation. How long will your corporation last under law? Forever. Oh, what can you do with your corporation? Anything that is legally permissible.
By politicians.
You can buy politicians. You have been paying attention. In fact, some of us say, even though it says you can do anything legally permissible under law, if I'm really paying attention, apparently you can do a whole lot of illegal shit too. Right? And you get away with it. So, I just want to point out that the creation of this institution, the corporation, which when they get big enough become the most dominant institutions of our culture, right? That it's super easy to actually create them. They last forever. There are virtually no controls over them. Now I'm going to take us back to 1789 and ask you, do you know what it took to create a corporation in the newly formed United States of America for basically the first 75, almost 100 years of our existence as a country? You had to get a bill introduced in the lower house of the legislature, and it had to pass by a majority. And then that same bill had to go to the upper house, and it had to pass by a majority. And then the governor had to sign it. Does that sound like anything you know of?
Law.
Law. Gary, it was as difficult to just get a corporate charter as it is today to pass a law, which is to say it was tightly controlled. Oh, and not only that, as you were going through that process, you had to prove that there was an existing public need that was not being met either by current government or by current private businesses. And if you were granted the privilege, not the right, but the privilege to incorporate, then all you could do is to satisfy that public need that you had already identified. And if you were ever found to do anything beyond that, any kind of business above and beyond that, your corporate charter, you know what would happen to your corporate charter? Dissolve. Poof. Gone away. The corporate death penalty. Oh, and by the way, how long would your corporate charter last? 5 to 10 years, at which point it automatically dissolved. Some of them went as high as 20, but most of them were actually much shorter. 20 years was about the average. But some were as few as 5 to 10. I think some of the mining and timber corporations lasted up to 40 years, but none of them longer than that. Yes, sir.
Is there anything in the Constitution that says that a corporation is a person?
No, sir.
The courts keep saying?
No, sir. And we'll get.
I've never found it.
It's not there. I've read that document many times, and that's what this new movement is all about. And what I'm trying to do now is to understand how did it come to be? How have these corporations gained so much power? And here's the thing: the corporation was once tightly controlled as an entity in this country. And the problem is that we have allowed, and I guess what I'm getting at is this: if this is helpful to you, if I'm right that there is a distinction between being free and sovereign and subordinate and accountable, if I'm correct that there's a difference between rights and duties, and I am, then if it's worth asking ourselves, where should a corporation go in this framework? Well, a corporation can only come into being when the charter is issued by state government. The charter itself can subordinate the corporation to the state. We can hold the corporation accountable. The charter could actually describe what the duties are the way they once were, that we could actually say, and I believe we should say, that a corporation should only exist if it acts in the public interest. I'm saying that a corporation should be on this side of the line. And the problem is, when the U.S. Supreme Court, in an act of supreme judicial activism, says, oh no, we say, even though it's nowhere in the Constitution, we're going to interpret the Constitution to say that a corporation is a person with rights, it perverts this whole framework. You see, the idea of a corporation claiming constitutional rights or corporate personhood is not just a confusing idea. It's not just something that lawyers should be concerned with. I'm telling you folks, this is a linchpin. This is a bedrock of how the small ruling elite have hijacked our country away from us, and they legitimize, they legalize their oppression. The problem is that today these big transnational corporations who are doing all this harm and abuse is almost all legal. And they're getting away with it. And frankly, we have let them get away with it. And so today, I am here representing over 125,000 people and growing that are calling to non-violently resist, to engage in a cultural revolution in the United States of America, where in nonviolent means we use the tools of the Constitution itself to amend the Constitution, to correct the erroneous decision, the faulty logic of the Supreme Court that have allowed these big corporations to steal our country away from us. And so, if you want to join this movement, I'm going to ask you to please, if you'll start that one at the back, if you will please sign this petition. And I want to be clear about this. We will open it up for questions. But this petition is not just going to be a bunch of names that we present to anybody. This is an organizing petition. If you sign this, you're joining a movement, and you will be contacted by us. Gary Fitzgerald will find ways to contact you to be able to get you involved in a movement to take our country back. Because it's past time to sit around and say, ain't it awful? It's time for us to get active collectively together and create the kind of movement that will be commiserate with the problem that we're facing. Because these small ruling elite have created a racist, sexist, class-oppressive society. They are destroying the planet, and they are doing so in our names. And I, for one, say, ya basta. Did you take that? Enough already. And if you would please sign up. Okay, then just pass it along. That's totally fine. If you don't want to participate, that's totally your call. I will say this, that what we are asking folks to do is to figure out what are we going to do about this problem. And the rest of our time together, I hope we'll have a facilitated discussion. We'll start it by question and answer so that we can have a dialogue, and then we will end up today with conversation around strategy. Sound good? So what I would like to do, if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, to just raise your hand right now. And keep it up for just a moment. Watch this. You'll be number 1. You'll be number 2. Gary, you'll be number 3. Sir, you'll be number 4. Ma'am, you'll be number 5. Anybody else? We'll do this a couple of different times, so 1 through 5. And the reason that I do this is so that now, have you ever been someplace where somebody gives a good speech and the next thing you know, maybe I gave a bad speech, but I did actually give a speech. I told a story, right? And then, like at these events, then somebody says questions, and then there's just back and forth like this, and then next, and a bunch of hands go up, and it's back and forth like this. In this context, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to do now is share space together. So let's
My
start.
question?
Yes.
Okay, I see what you've done with for U.S. Constitution, but what comes in my mind is manifest destiny, and how the United States, actually what they did, the United States was populated too, just like Africa and other things. And all the Indians were pretty much gone after they were finished. So I don't see that, I mean, I'm already, I'm questioning the validity that it was ever legal to begin with.
Well-
They made the rule, they made the laws, they made the rules, and that's what's happening now, just like, and maybe we're still the Indians.
Yeah, well, I think we are. But here's the thing, that's the point, is that this was used to confuse us, and no doubt about it. But what I'm saying is that we can actually live in a way where we're actually collectively making decisions. I agree with that. Is there a follow-up, or?
Show me.
All right, the American Revolution itself that threw off the king. The abolitionist movement that actually ended the institution that the entire social, political, and economic reality was dependent upon. The women's movement at Seneca Falls that actually had the audacity to say that women should actually have full legal rights. The trade union movement that overturned a whole series of laws that made it a criminal conspiracy to dare to organize.
Those are good points, good points.
All I'm saying is this, because I hear I hear, like, show me, you know, the show me state, like, there is a part of that, but what I'm saying is American history is replete with examples of people challenging illegitimate rule. And we've done it before, and we can do it again. You know, and before we go to number 2, I got to ask, hey Gary, how much did I charge you to come here today? What was my fee?
Nothing.
So here's the thing, y'all. You know, if this were Texas, there wouldn't be a man without a hat on his head. Sir, can I borrow that hat off of your head right there? Thank you very much. I'm also a magician, and you will notice that this hat is empty. I'm going to do a magic trick. Are you with me? I want to turn this hat into money. What I'm going to do is pass the hat. Just like old-fashioned way. I don't charge any money as I travel around the country doing this work. And I tell you, like, I'm trying to fundraise here to try to keep going. And I like to say, and by the way, if you're in a position where you can write a check, that would be fantastic. And if you are going to write a check, the organization or group that keeps me going is called Democracy Unlimited of Humboldt County. So if you're going to write a check, that's where it goes. But the thing is, you know, I hate it when I hear fundraisers say, give till it hurts. Because I'm not going to ask anybody to hurt. And I hate when I hear that. And honestly, if putting any money in here would hurt you, just don't do it. Just pass it. But likewise, I'm not going to say give till it feels good, because I hope you already feel good. I am going to say this. Honestly, give till it feels right to you. And only you know how much that is. Know this, that I quit a successful law practice in order to dedicate myself to this movement. And I don't say that so you'll pat me on the head or that you'll feel sorry for me. I say it so you'll put money in here. So please do be generous. Just take that and pass it and keep this movement going, because ain't nobody going to fund our liberation but ourselves. Who's number 2? Yes, sir.